Hey everyone, welcome to the 100x Dudes podcast. This is Jeremiah Teo and Joshua Badu, your pastoral performance coaches. And again, you're listening to the 100x Dudes podcast, your weekly dose of how to 100x your life in a massive way. And today, we have the great honor and privilege to not just welcome one guest, but two guests onto the podcast itself, a first ever four-way conversation about Christian leadership, about marketplace ministry, as well with mission involvement as well. Now, without further ado, I do want to take the time to properly introduce our guests. Great, amazing individuals in the business world, and that is Patrick and Holly Bell. And for them, they are involved in business coaching. And first up for Patrick, he himself is a strategist and a business acceleration, profit optimization, and marketing specialist. And he has a special ability to work in diverse industries and multicultural environments to find unique opportunities for companies to significantly increase their market share. Along with his master's degree in intercultural studies, in Wheaton College Graduate School, Eleanor in 1995, as well it is MBA in International Business School, Regent University, Virginia, 2007. Patrick has lived and worked in North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And this broad international experience allows him to identify practical solutions that might not be evident to business owners who operate their businesses in a single environment. Last but not least, the well-known, highly successful profit acceleration software is a brainchild of Patrick Bell and was co-developed by Focus.com, where Patrick currently serves as a VP of Product Development and Innovation. Alongside with him, it is his wife, Holly Bell, who has a master's degree in intercultural studies from Wheaton College Graduate School. She is a director of onboarding at Leader Publishing Worldwide and helps new business coaches get trained on software. She's also the mother of 3 grown children and husband to Patrick and tries to keep up with his constant new ideas. As well, she loves global adventures and any way to serve the Lord and his people. So without further ado, let's welcome Patrick and Holly Bell. Thank you so much for really investing your time in our podcast. How's it been for you guys in Kenya right now?
Well, it's, life in Africa is always a challenge of one sort or the other, but it's a little bit of a different challenge from our first time. We feel like we're walking in a whole new season. I think 15 years ago, we first arrived, it was just one challenge and trouble after the other. And now it's just been, I think, one of the best years of our lives to be here, and things are going well. Relationally and the whole family, and spiritually and business-wise, and so we're just really enjoying the season a lot.
Everything is a lot of seasons, right? So we have good seasons, hard seasons, and I am really thankful for this last season here in Kenya. It's just been fantastic.
I wanted to really jump in because I know before we started recording, we're having a bit of discussion. You shared that you had gone to Japan with the plan for being there for 1 year, and you stayed there for 12. So it seems like there's the possibility of, one thing turns into another. And I was curious because you being in Kenya now, what was the original plan for you being there? And have you seen it change or divert since arriving there?
Let me back up to Japan a little bit. I mean, we went for 1 year, but in the same time, we really feel like that we are God's servants, right? And so he's our commanding officer. He tells us where to go. Our job is to listen and obey. And we just our goal is to listen well. And so when we felt like God was saying, stay in Japan, we just stayed, and it was hard. My experience in Japan, I'm just going back a little bit, was a little bit different than Holly's. My joke is that the hardest part of our 12 years in Japan was the middle 11. So for 6 months, last 6 months were really great. But there's a lot of challenge there. We also have a very significant ministry, we can chat about later maybe, but then we came to Kenya the first time, and the day we arrived, our work permits were denied. I was coming to work, I'd done my MBA from Regent University in Virginia, And one of the profs there was a Maasai from Kenya. And he said, we have this Kingdom Business Safari company, come over and be our marketing director. And so we came with that intention, but the day we arrived, our work permits were denied. And then 2 weeks later, we went into the elections of December 2007, and the country went right to civil war. So now there's no safaris. So he says, well, you don't have a job, you don't have a work permit, so just start consulting or something, keep your head down. And we managed to stick it out a year and a half. And then, but we, eventually we lost everything. It was a very hard season. Learned a lot through the process about business consulting, but we had to go. And so we were the last 12 years in North America. Now we're here again. So let me back up a little bit. We went to Japan for 1 year. We stayed for 12. We thought we were coming to Kenya for 12 years. We stayed for 1.5. And then we thought we'd go to America for, a short time. We end up staying for 12 years again. So now we're here thinking we're going to be here a long time, but we just don't know. I mean, we just really have to realize that, our life is not our own, right? We're bought with a price.
Yeah.
So who knows how long we'll stay? Our job is just to walk in step with the Spirit, see what He wants us to do, and we just be obedient to that.
Patrick, Holly, I know there's so many things we can discuss today about your missionary work, about kingdom business, being an entrepreneur in the kingdom. And I know Jeremiah's got plenty of questions as well. But one of the first things I'm very curious about, because you guys are living it, you guys are really foot on the ground, have been in these different places. How has your mind expanded when you look at different cultures? Now that you've been in Japan for 12 years, you've been in Kenya, you've been in Europe, you've been in all these places. What is your mindset now when you look at culture and different peoples versus maybe when you were first starting out saying, oh, I believe God wants me to go to this new country?
Holly, why don't you start?
Wow. Well, I have always loved culture and I love learning. And, I think, my first missions experience, I was like 25 and I went to Japan for the first time. And it was amazing. I went to teach English and I, learned so much. And I came back and went, wow, it's like the lenses of my glasses were different. And I looked at everything differently. And then I had the opportunity to go smuggle Bibles in Eastern Europe in 1989 and go behind the Iron Curtain and visit people and see how people lived so differently. I remember coming back to North America and saying, why do we have all these Bibles in all these different versions? Good night. Like these people don't even have one in their own language, and I remember being kind of angry, like the Busy Woman Bible or the, children's this or the, there are all these different kind of versions.
1,000 different translations.
People don't even have one. I spent all my time doing that. And so, with every experience, with every country, your whole world expands and you just see God in different ways and how He's moving. And I think that's really important for us to always be alert to God's Spirit and what He's doing and not try to go in with our preconceived ideas of what we think. In Japan, we went there 1 year to teach English, and God gave us the heart and vision to buy out English schools, to bring over English teachers, to impact this little city that had, 2 tiny little Christian churches and 50 Buddhist temples. And we couldn't find any youth under the age of 30 who knew Jesus. And so, that rolled into a whole new thing. We wanted to be a credible business in the community. And that's what happened. God unfolded that. We never planned it. It just happened. And God, unfolded that so that we became the provider for English teachers throughout the whole city, public school, private school. And so we impacted the city that way. And I mean, I had a little TV show and our kids were all in the schools, and we just, God just did a great work in those 12 years, but we never would have imagined that first year that that's where we were going. So I think that's how He's always operated. We just go in and we just start living there. We just start rooting wherever we are and just being available for wherever we are.
Yeah, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yes, I'm really curious, right, with the concept and truth about mission, right? Because right now we're living COVID and the COVID world has changed everything, even with mission. So that even now there's so much talks about future ready mission, like metaverse. How do we go into the AI world to do mission? So I'm really curious of two questions I will ask. I mean, I'll leave it to either of you to answer, the first and the second. That is, what is mission? That's number one, right? And the second question is, has mission changed, for us as we come into this new, post-pandemic world, as the future is right now knocking at our doorstep? Yeah.
So what is mission? I think that even the concept of that has changed over the years, because it used to be crossing cultures, to going maybe to a hard place, sharing the love of Jesus, impacting a different world. The church now has said we're all missionaries, and that may be true, and I'm not sure it is. I mean, I believe we're all ministers of the gospel. We're all disciples, so we should be at least. But the use of the word missionary, I think because the local churches are adapting that term and saying, hey, we're all missionaries, I think it's contributed to the lack of people desiring to go to hard places and be what were once traditional missionaries. But then the whole mission movement has changed. I grew up in a culture in Canada where I was told, and I'm actually fourth generation missionary. My great grandparents were missionaries to Africa. My grandparents skipped a generation, but then came to me. So my great grandparents were pioneers, missionaries in Southern Africa. And my grandfather translated the Bible into Bemba, which is the main language of Zambia. So there have been some, great people have gone before us. And I grew up in an era where I was taught, if you really want to give your life to Christ, then you'll quit your job or whatever you're doing and go into missions, because that's the highest calling you could do. And I believed that for a long time. I no longer believe it. I believe that God's got a calling on each of us, and we are responsible to understand what He calls us to, and then go and do it as unto the Lord with all our heart. And as we do that, we're living in this life of worship before us. But I think the change came when I was in Japan, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm a missionary, kind of a tent maker. It's kind of cool, teaching English. And then we ended up buying the schools that we were part of, and I go, wait a minute, I'm now a business owner. And I'm no longer the traditional missionary. I'm a business guy. And I'm still a minister of the gospel. I'm still a disciple maker. But that was a big mind shift. And I'm starting to think, okay, wait a minute, there's this whole thing called kingdom business. This is back 1999, 2000. And so I'm into kingdom business. And for me, my journey was, I had no idea how to grow a business. Like, I have zero understanding. And so I started looking on the internet, the early days, like who are the top marketing guys out there? Started finding some people. I'm starting to spend thousands of dollars. And Holly's like, why are you studying all this marketing? Like, what's going on? And I go, I don't know. I just feel like I'm supposed to. But that feeling went literally to 10,000 hours plus of figuring out, how do you systematically grow a business? And I feel like that's the journey that God's taking me down, even to where I am now, where I'm, developing software for business coaches. And that's where I'm finding the most favor in my ministry. So for me, it's not like I go out, I finish my day at work and go out and do ministry. For me, it's when I get up in the morning till when I go to bed at night, it's all worship. As I do it unto the Lord, it's all ministry. Because I wanted to end my day as well with hearing God saying, well done today, faithful servant. But if we expect people to jump out of their jobs and go into, full-time missions, I just think that model's gone. And it hasn't completely gone, because we still need those people for very hard places, but it is fast disappearing, let's say.
Well, I wonder, Patrick, because I'm recently been reading this book called Your Spiritual Gifts Can Help Your Church Grow by an author named Peter C. Wagner. And he kind of shared a lot with what you just said about, the old school mindset of missionary was, if you're a Christian, the highest calling is quit your job and, go in, spread the gospel worldwide, go do the Great Commission and, leave everything behind. But like you, he also said that he believes that that is an error in the church world, and that even though every Christian may have what he deems as a role of playing a missionary when it may require itself, it doesn't mean that's your main calling. And the argument he was making was, if you have a spiritual gift for being a missionary, that's when that actually may be when God's calling you to go and do that kind of work. My question for yourself and for Holly is, are you familiar? Do you also believe in this idea of being spiritually gifted for the work of missionary work, and that being something that then qualifies you to be the one to go out to, say, different nations and actually do that kind of missionary work?
I absolutely agree with that. One of my gifts is the gift of missionary. Like I cross cultures very comfortably, and actually I feel more at home when I'm in a different culture than when I'm in North America. So now the challenge that we face today is not only can you have the spiritual gift of missionary, you got to have a trade or a skill. And so I go back to the Moravians, where when they were, I believe at their height of sending missionaries around the world, they would be in, like, say, a small village of Moravians, and everyone was trained to share the gospel, and everyone was trained with a trade. And so when their call came they needed, say, 2 missionaries to wherever, the Arctic, whatever, Greenland or someplace, I think they would draw them by, like, draw lots or something. They'd select 2 people because they knew that everyone in the village was trained to go. And then everyone behind them who stayed behind felt disappointed, like, oh, why didn't I get to go? Why didn't God choose me? But then they're fasting 2 days a week to save their resources to support those people that went also. So it was just the whole community was, we are here to be missionaries, and we're preparing ourselves to go. Right now, we don't have that in the church, hardly at all. I think that everyone wants to be a worship leader, obviously, and that's the cool thing to be. But I think the great hindrance to missionaries, and I'll just finish with that then, is I think it's grandparents. And I hate to say this because I'm probably getting there soon, but it's the grandparents who don't want their kids to take the grandkids overseas. And it's like, how dare you take my grandchildren away from me? And I think it's not just, there's several problems, but this is one of the challenges to missions today, is we need our older people to say, I'm here to sacrifice as well. And the biggest sacrifice they can make is to release their kids to go. That's a whole different aside.
By the way, both of our parents were very much supportive of everything we did. So that was a huge blessing for us.
Yeah,
that
true.
They were just, sure, go. We never had that. That wasn't any of our experience. Just to kind of throw that in.
Clarify.
But
yes.
I think one of the questions that you said it's there's been so much change because of the pandemic and because of COVID. It's changed our world forever. It's changed church. It's changed everything. Our whole lives are going to be, well, before the pandemic, and for those of us that are older, we have a whole, well, before the internet, so we have all these different seasons, right? So I would say in one sense, the internet's allowed us to do so many things and see people, and even our whole business now is all online. We can travel, we can do things. But I think one thing that's happening that I'm seeing is that we're so shallow now, because we get online, we talk, we connect with people, and then we move on to the next people and the next people. And it's like, who in our physical world are we ministering to? Like, who are we actually physically connecting with? And because it's very easy to be online, but the reality is it's these people that are around us every day, that see us every day, that we have to really be aware of. And that's the one thing I'm starting to sense, that people are afraid. like they've been wearing masks, and there's this fear everywhere, you know, and it's like we have to make sure that whoever we're with physically, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, that we're extending that openness and grace and getting to know people in our physical world. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my perception on it.
So Joshua, you talked about the metaverse, AI, things like that. Yeah, I think it's happening. It's unavoidable. But us interacting as missionaries in the metaverse, I think the metaverse is still 10 years off. I don't think it's something immediate. We looked at it for our business as well. Do we get involved in, we have our own platform. We have our own virtual worlds that we can be a part of and bring our coaches into. And we looked at this, and all those around us said, no, this is not the time, because we're a decade away from this. If you go into some virtual worlds, they're just, they're vacant, some of them. And
it's almost like chat rooms kind of feeling.
Yeah, but who's actually there? Like, what kind of people are there? And so I don't want to comment too much now. I'd probably offend some of the listeners today, the viewers. So, but I think if we can help our young people get off their screens and have real conversations and share from their heart and all that, and meet them in the real world and show them that the real world is still a much better place to be, I think we're all going to be far better off.
Jeremiah, I'll pass it to you in just a second, but I wanted to kind of piggyback off what Holly was saying about even our society having a certain shallowness now, and it can be towards the fear of being around each other because of COVID and whatnot, or as a shallowness of just staying comfortable and being unwilling to sacrifice. Something that comes to my mind is the parable of the sower, how you had the different types of soils. The one that was shallow, the one that was taken out by distractions and weeds, and then finally the one that produced 100-fold harvest. And for me, one of the things I think is adding to this shallowness is the amount of distractions that are just so steeped in our culture today, which maybe it's different from what you're seeing overseas potentially. I would love for you to even expand on that, and sorry for taking up too much time, Jeremiah. But I find there's just so much distraction now that makes it even that much harder for us to say, you know what, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to put down the internet. I'm going to put down all the luxuries and be willing to spend some time with someone in the hope that this may actually bring fruit and something eternal. So Jeremiah, do you have anything else to say, Jeremiah?
Just want to have a quick response as well to the next generation, because recently I read an amazing blog written by Seth Godin, and the question is, what should we call the next generation? Because we had baby boomers, we had Gen X, we have Gen Y or millennials, and Gen Z. And for him, he actually challenged or advocated for the term Generation C, right? A, B, C, C, which stands for COVID, which stands for carbon, which stands for climate change. So that's where, interestingly, the next generation that he advocated for a term like that to be to be addressed, for conversations, publications, or whatsoever. So right now, I'm just curious about for Christian leaders, be like from Gen X, baby boomers, or anyone, because normally people who listen in are really Christian leaders, Gen X, Gen Y, and some of Gen Z as well. My question is, what are some tips from Patrick and Holly as they've observed in multicultural environment for us Christian leaders to be future ready and being ready for mission wherever we're called to, because the world is always changing? How would you advise a few tips for us to be mission ready as we are looking to minister to Generation Z individuals?
Well, I would say, I was really blessed that my father gave me 2 Timothy 1:7 years ago. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, of power and love and a sound mind. And I have walked that verse my whole life. And I just want to encourage people there's a lot of deception that goes on all the time. And so we can't, for Pat and I, like, we left Canada in December 2020. We took our kids to the Dominican Republic. Like, we were like, we are not letting COVID stop us. We refuse to let this thing control us. We follow God. We go where he tells us to go. And we've always done that our whole lives. Our kids walk in that themselves because they were raised in it. And I just want to keep encouraging people that there was life long before COVID. There is going to be life long after COVID. We can't let the media and all these things worry about this and how are we going to do this. We have to keep our eyes fixed on Christ, the author and perfecter of faith. And we have to keep going and reaching out and loving people where we are, and just not let this whole thing control everything we do. And I feel really bad for kids for the last few years, because they've seen all these masks. I mean, there's like 3-year-olds that don't even know what people look like. Like, as soon as all the mask requirements came off, I remember going places and going, wow, that's what you look like. Wow, what a great smell you have. And it's like, because we fought the mask thing for like the whole time. Like, we were just like, because it really messes with your identity, messes with who you are. And we want to be sensitive. I don't want to be insensitive, because a lot of people were highly affected by it. And I don't want to go there at all. But I just feel like for the next generation, they have to kind of look at their history. They've got to see where we've come from, what's happening, and how God is going to keep moving in the future. And we want to be faithful to what God calls us to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I'm thinking.
I kind of see with the changing landscape of today's world, with, and I guess the pandemic is just one of those main examples of how things can shift. When you look at the Bible, it talks about the end times, and I'm not saying that we're in the end times, but just talk about how the world, it predicts the world getting worse right before Christ's return. And if you talk to a lot of different Bible teachers or Christians or anyone really, a lot of people have different opinions on what times they believe we're in, and no one knows the day or the hour. But if we're taking the principle of that, the world will get worse as Christ's return comes, how is it that we are to be, like, I know what you're saying, Holly, about that we should be remembering 2 Timothy about moving the world without fear. But if you continue to see the world kind of, cave in itself and become different, how is it that we're meant to be moving about it if the world itself is kind of rejecting what God's trying to do? Do you see the future being a place where, even though the world may get darker, God's light's going to continue to shine brighter and brighter, and we're going to continue to do all the things we're trying to do? Or do you believe there will be a time where it's like almost like God's word, what God's trying to do might be hampered because of how dark the world may become one day?
That's a really good question.
Us believers have to stay grounded in the word and continue to be vocal with the good news. And I think continue and do what we can to be an inspiration and an example to the younger generation coming before us. So we always talk to our kids about, like the verse that Holly shared, we do not have a spirit of fear. We walk in freedom. We walk in confidence because of God. We walk in courage, right? Nothing is too hard for God. And you keep feeding them the truth, because they're hearing all kinds of nonsense from all of their friends and from different media, both sides or whatever. You have to keep them grounded in the truth. Keep their eyes fixed on Christ as best you can. And then put them in situations, if you're parents, put them in situations where they go and experience something and get them off of their little social media screens and bubbles and things like that. Like, I look at our kids, our youngest is Mark, and Mark grew up with a lot of, he went to a Christian school, they all did. A lot of
in different countries.
Yeah, in different countries.
They all went
starting
to public
in Japan.
school. They had a variety of things, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, they started in public school in Japan and learned Japanese, and then they went to the U.S. for a year, and then Canada into Christian school. And now they're, our daughter's the oldest, and she's moved on and done university and a teacher. And our youngest is is Mark. And, he spent a lot of time on social media, and then he realized that wasn't good. And so we encouraged him to go to Bible college because he wasn't ready for university. He just didn't want to go. He was the top student in the school and top athlete and all that, most popular kid, all those kind of things.
Oh, wow.
But just wasn't ready for university. So we challenged him to go to Calvary Chapel Bible College, and he went a semester in Italy, and now he's been 2 semesters in York, England. Yeah. And so now he's preaching the gospel on the bus. He's leading a team to Austria to work with Ukrainian refugees. He's going to be in California starting in the summer, and he just really blossomed. But it's because, especially Holly, is like, go out and do something. Don't sit around here. And yes, we're going to help pay for you because it's great investment for us as well. But go out and do something amazing. You can't just sit around and look at your phone, whatever. And he wasn't just doing that. But I think that's a lot of the generation today. We've got to put them into situations where they're surrounded by incredible people speaking into their life, words of truth all the time. And, when they're young, they might not be ready to be missionaries in high school, junior high, and, I think maybe parents, some kids come through public school really well. And parents say, hey, they're there, and we want them to be missionaries in this school. And I think a lot of kids aren't ready to be missionaries yet. They need to be grounded first, solidly, until they have a mind of their own and their brain has grown up and they make good decisions and their heart is, just hooked for the Lord. And that might not happen until their early 20s. So every child is different. But anyway, that incubator, that time where kids can just be around people that they really admire and want to emulate, I think is so important.
It sounds like you might have a 5th generation missionary potentially.
In the other question you about the darkness, and it's really interesting because I said, my mom's 85, and she's in her mind, like, this is like Jesus come back anytime now, like this is like the worst I've ever seen it. And I was really interesting because I looked back at one of these books that says what was happening, the year she was born, 1937, and like Hitler was rampant, Japan was crushing the world. Like there was a lot going on that was really dark at that time. And it's always been dark, like as far as, seasons come in different countries. And if you go to Nigeria or you go to a lot of countries, it's dark, Russia, Ukraine. And so I think, wherever that darkness is, we are still called to be lights. And that's who we are as believers. We are lights. And so our job is to bring light, to bring Jesus, to bring light wherever we are, and to bring others with us. So there's more light in wherever that darkness is. And so, we're all waiting, we're all anticipating the day that Jesus comes back. And we're looking for that. But in the meantime, he's put us here in this time, in this season, for such a time as this. And so I just want to encourage everybody to just look at where God's put them. And you just say, here I am. Here's my hands. Here's my feet. Here's my voice. What do you want me to do right now in this season, in my workplace, in my school, in my job, in my relationships? There's pain everywhere. Like it doesn't take long, to look at and see all that everywhere you go. And so it's just like taking that time to just be available to that person, just for that hour, for that time, to bring light, to bring Jesus to wherever they are on the scale. Like you'll meet people on so many, where they are on their journey is so different, right? And so it's just wherever you are, just do it and don't be afraid. Just reach out and just give a hug. I know, oh my gosh, give a bump, whatever it is, pull your mask down, whatever it is that makes a difference for that person. I just want to tell people that's what I would encourage them to do.
Amen. Amen. That's really beautiful. And really, as we are navigating in this world, never forget about that, beautiful interaction, fellowship as well. And just being there for the person. And it just makes wonder, to be praying for and just helping out people with embrace, and prayers as well. Right. I want to bring the conversation into another topic that's relevant to mission, relevant to Christian faith, and that is the topic of entrepreneurship, because that has been a misconception, right, in general, that being an entrepreneur is different from being a pastor or a Christian, because some people would think that being an entrepreneur is like, and being a Christian is like oil and water. They don't mix well. They don't integrate. So it's really strange. And definitely there are a few more questions about those topics I mentioned, but I'd love to hear from you guys. What would you say to people who mention like, being entrepreneur is not being Christian? What would you say to that?
Where do you get that from? I would say, where would you get that from? Wow.
I was going to say, can I just say real quick? I remember when we were in Japan and we figured out Pat was an entrepreneur. Okay. Like we didn't know that before. Like, when I met him, he was a Bible smuggler. We were working with refugees. We were doing stuff. I was working, in Las Vegas at the time. I come over to work on this summer team. Like we got married, like with this whole journey, right? And the whole time, I know that he's going to be a missionary and we're going to be missionaries and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do all this stuff. Well, then after we get to Japan and we've bought out these schools and we're like doing this whole education thing in our community. And then he wants to do this, he wants to do that. And I went, I think you're an entrepreneur, and so then I figured it out. But for there was probably 7 years there of marriage where it was just like, he's got a different idea like all the time. And it's like, he's driving me nuts because it's like, well, I thought you wanted to do this. Well, now you want to do this, but how does that work? And I just, and so my whole life now, he's always got a new idea, a new dream, a new thing. And God has really partnered us really, really well because he has all the ideas, he has all the stuff, but I come along and I go, well, I think this is how we can do it. This is how we should do it. And I might say, you know what, you got to put that one on hold. We've got to finish this before we can have time to do these other things. So God was really good in partnering us. We're really great partners and using our gifts to make things happen. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's always cool to see couples and marriages that complement each other, because you can kind of really see God's bigger picture working of like, if he's pushing forward, you need someone to kind of ground it down and make sure it's not further ahead than it needs to be for its time. But sorry, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yeah, so what about Patrick? What would you say to that misconception as weird but ongoing sometimes?
Well, I see there's a lot of examples of Christians in business in the Bible. And I think we've talked about it before, but there's just been this misconception for, many generations that you would leave your business and go, if God calls you, called into full-time ministry. And we've had this problem forever that we say, there's people say there's a divide between the sacred and the secular. And if you're a true Christian, you're going to be in full-time ministry of some sort. And then we've had this whole hierarchical concept of society of the Christian world, where we have missionaries, overseas missionaries at the very top, especially to unreached people groups. And then you have pastors kind of below them. You guys have probably heard this before. And below that, if you can't be a pastor, well, then an acceptable would be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, because you're still helping people. God forbid, at the very bottom, you have the politicians and the lawyers and things like that. But what we've done is, the Christians of those generations have abandoned the whole marketplace of, area of influence. They've abandoned the media. They've abandoned politics. And so we're left with the decisions of unrighteous people that we have to live with.
Yeah.
So I think there has been a move this divine move, which is global, back into kingdom entrepreneurship, back into business's mission, realizing that this is God's intention from the start, that, you know, as God calls you to be where you are. I mean, if someone says, I feel called to be a plumber, that's where you should be. And if you know that God's called you there, then you're actually walking in disobedience to be a pastor or a missionary. And how can God bless that? And vice versa. If God's called you to be a pastor, you dare not stay a plumber, you know, so things like that. So it's a long shift. We still run into it here in Africa, where Christians, you know, pastors will say, or bishops or whatever say, well, God called me out of business into the ministry. And maybe that's true. Maybe he did. But to set that up as a model for everyone else is just, I mean, it's wrong now. And I think the world is recognizing it's a wrong way of looking at things. I think the challenge, though, is the churches still today. We have business people in the church. Pastors don't have a clue how to minister to business people. So what they do is they say, well, you know, you can hold the offering basket on Sunday or whatever. And if we have a building program or something, then we'd really want your money and as much as you can give, obviously. And pastors don't know how to minister to business people. And so instead of coming from the point of view of, hey, can we have some money? What if pastors were to come in and say, how can I serve you in your business? What challenges are you facing? It's like, oh, you're not making enough money. Let me see who I know in my network that can help you grow your business, increase your profits, things like that. And let me pray for you as well. But I think there has to be positive action there. And there has to be, it's got to be more, well, God bless you and I wish you all the best. You can't just say that, right? Because it's like saying, someone says, hey, I'm sick. And the pastor goes, well, God bless you in that, you know, good luck. Like you don't do that. You pray for them and you ask, you know, bring the elders around for healing or whatever the culture is. Pastors need to be more equipped to help Christians in the marketplace live out their faith, be willing to share the gospel, show them how to share the gospel, things like that.
Wow, Patrick, you said so much then. I feel like there's so much to unpack in what you said that it could keep us here for another hour. So for the sake of not extending longer than we can, I do have a question for you that I think each and every one of us here and those listening who are in the entrepreneurial space, or even in any space really, maybe have been challenged with, which is the entrepreneurial lifestyle. To me, is much like the much like the Christian lifestyle, that it's a lifestyle of faith, that you are believing that there's a bigger vision out there that right now the world can't see it, but you see it, and people may think you're crazy for seeing it, but you're going to go, you know, make it happen anyway, manifest it. That being said, I really want to try and articulate this in the proper way. When we are making decisions, we tend to make decisions based off different factors. So in business, though we may use our faith to say, you know, I believe I can go and build this business, or I can believe I can, you know, pursue this particular product. There also now is more technology and analytics to say, hey, this is what the numbers say, this is what people want, and this is what you should be building, right? And then you also do have the aspect of us coming from a place of faith and belief in Christ, which says, you know, God gives you a word. And that word says, you know, it may go counter to what the world's saying, but this is the word I have for you. And if you believe in this word, I'm going to make it happen. Like, you know, Abraham and Sarah kind of thing. I want to know for you, when you make your decisions in business, and I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, maybe it's both, who knows? But how do you navigate the decisions do you make? Do you find yourself moving more off analytics and what the research and the study stats say? Do you find yourself moving more off a word that God's given you, even though maybe be counter to what the stats say? How do you find yourself usually making decisions for where you put your time and investments?
Well, now I make my decisions differently than I used to. And the main difference is I listen to my wife a lot more. And
yes, Holly.
I find that God, hey, I think I've run into trouble in the past with my entrepreneurial ideas, like this would be a great idea. And Holly's like, And I'm learning when she does, it's probably, I need to think about it, because as we're not just married, I guess we're almost like business partners in a sense, or we do life together. It's not like we separate everything. It's just all there. And so I want to walk in unity with Holly, because if we're walking in unity, then I think we have a shot at achieving what we want to achieve. But it's been very expensive, I think, if I'm just making my own decisions. So analytics, I'm not sure about so much. I do believe, yeah, you could follow analytics. I also want to just say that entrepreneurship is not easy. I know several years ago, they interviewed 3 so-called self-made millionaires on TV, and they said, on average, how long did it take you to, how many times of failure did you have before you finally broke through? And the average of these 3 millionaires was, I think, 13 or 12.
Wow.
So they had 12 or 13 failures before they found success and made their million plus. And so we can't just say, God is, I've got a word from the Lord and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for it without the analytics, without the thinking. People in the non-Christian world say, I'm going to go with my gut, right? And gut is just an acronym for gave up thinking, right? So we have to have that wisdom among us. We have to reach out and get wisdom and get counsel and all that as well. So you couldn't go with analytics. You could say, what does the world want? And then I think my greatest success would be the development, of course, through Leader and Focus.com, where we're going. And having their help in this, but this development of this profit acceleration software. So it wasn't an idea before. It's like there were no metrics around it. It kind of was born out of a little bit of laziness. It was, I wanted to be a consultant and I had no idea what questions to ask. And then I thought, what are all the best questions in different areas? So if we look at, I want to help a company implement some joint ventures. Well, how would I know that joint ventures is an area to implement? So I gathered all the teaching I had on joint ventures, which, and this is not over a weekend. This was over 10,000 hours of figuring this out. What are all the best questions to ask around joint ventures? And then what would happen if a company was doing really well at it? What advice would I give? Or what if they were doing average? Or what if they weren't doing any? What advice would I give along the way? But then you extrapolate that to multiple referral systems, to upsell, cross-sell, to downsell, to getting leads through digital marketing, market dominating position, the whole gamut there, right? So what questions do you ask and why? Yeah. And what advice can you give no matter where someone's at, no matter what industry they're in? And how do you monetize the result? All those things, like if someone says, I have all these problems, I can say, go do this and this and this. If you do step 1, you'll make $50,000. If you do step 2, you'll make $120,000. That just didn't appear, and no one was asking for it. But I thought, if I'm going to go and create a report for a company that I've just consulted with, what goes in the report? And how do I know what goes in the report? And then eventually, can I just push a button and get a report? That's where it all came from. So it wasn't like there were any metrics around it. It took 10,000 plus hours and a lot of money and a lot of years of not earning any income. And Holly saying, hey, can you get a job at Starbucks or somewhere to bring in anything to help us pay the grocery bill? And we went into a lot of debt, and we sank so low. We were so far behind, we thought we were first. That's one of those things. And there were a lot of tears in that season. And so, but there was a belief that I'm still supposed to keep doing this and still supposed to develop it. And yeah. it was a long journey.
Jeremiah, sorry, I'm going to be selfish for a second, Jeremiah, because I have to ask Holly now. That faithful wife standing next to forgive me saying this, Patrick, but almost like a madman with the vision, with the mission.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the most, with the most respect, I'm just joking around.
Yeah.
What could you share with us about yourself being that partner in that season when you're going through these things? Because at times I feel like many people can feel like they're taking a bet on what someone else is trying to achieve, and it can be very risky. High risk, high reward, but it is a risk nonetheless. What did you learn during that season? How did you grow, and how did you begin to even grow in a way that kept on supporting Patrick and what he was doing, and ultimately what you were both doing, I guess?
Yeah, I'm a big person on seasons. There's a season, there's for everything. We're always on journey, that God is always with us. I think, we'd had some really strong seasons together before this. And so I think we had a lot of foundation, a lot of a really good connection, and everything I would say, worked together well on. So, our season in Japan really gave us a lot of foundation in letting God open doors for us, surprise us, walk with us. So when the season came that, he started this whole marketing thing, and I was just like, what in the world? Like, why are you doing this? And I had no idea, right? The journey that it would take us on, when we left Japan, it was really hard. Like we had to let go of a lot of things. And it was always, I'd go before the Lord, and I had to have that thing where I would be released to go to the next thing. So my relationship with the Lord was super strong, always, because that's our foundation. I think, for Pat and I, we have always tried to make sure that we're praying together, that we're walking together. Literally, that's how we do life. Every day we get out, we walk, we pray, we process, And so I think when it got to that point where we lost everything, we went to Kenya, we tried to do all this stuff he wanted to do. And I remember going, why are we doing this? Like the whole thing, it's like a whole book in itself. But I had to let go of a lot of things, but God was so good. Like he brought me good friends to pray with. He brought, a lot of solid people to help us process and to help us walk. But there were days when I was just like, what is happening? But God would give us something else. We opened our home to international students, and that allowed us to bring in extra income. I've got great stories, of how God just stepped in and provided constantly, was so faithful through friends, through family. But I think together we had to continually love each other, serve each other, help each other, and stay connected that way, and not let the enemy in, because the enemy wants to divide. He wants to conquer. He wants to separate. And as women, as husbands, wives, we have to just continually put that circle, that hedge of protection around us, not let the enemy in, because that is what messes everything up. And so I would just say to people, one of the things I would say is make sure you're having your prayer times together, you're walking together, you're in unity. If you're not in unity, take a breath, take a step back, don't do it, wait. That is like really, really important. Just take time. God may show you something else that may work better than whatever it is you're trying so hard to do, you're striving so hard to do. Like, just take a breath, and wait. Just wait until you're both in unity and you're walking together in unity. And I just encourage people, you're on journey. You really are on journey. You don't know how long you have. You don't know how many years you have. You don't know. Today is your day. Today is the day you have. This is the day the Lord has made. And so make sure that you're walking in today, because this is what you have. So that's what I would say.
Wow. As Holly mentioned that, it reminds me, right, in Matthew chapter 6, I think it's 32 or 31, it says about, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has its own worries, right? And that's such a great, reminder, really, as the day itself comes, God's grace is sufficient for us to live through that day to the best of our abilities. that, the cliche always says, as we do the best, he will do the rest, right? So just thank you for that reminder. And I want to bring into the topic of hustle culture, because on social media, we have seen so many posts about you got to hustle, you got to work really hard to get to where you want. You got to make sacrifices. You got to have like sleepless nights, network with the right people, and really be discretional in who you choose to hang out with. And of course, if you go to the extreme, we will go into like, being exclusive, just work hard, hustle and bustle. And of course, right, as we come to Christian faith, we also talk about that ideal Sabbath, right? God himself demonstrated, even in the days of creation, he didn't use 7 full days. He used 6 days in creating heaven and earth, and 1 day to rest, not because he's imperfect or tired, but he chosen to rest on day 7 as an illustration for us to embrace the ideal Sabbath, in trusting God that he will do all things to help us, bring us to where we want to be. So I have a question for both of you, Patrick and Holly, is that as we confront the contemporary culture of hustle, hard work, which is not necessarily wrong, because even in Proverbs, talk about so much about diligence, right? Against indolence, against laziness. Diligence is a virtue, but how do we navigate through this entrepreneurial hustle culture and allow God to take the center of glory and focus in our entrepreneurial journey?
So a couple things. There's a prayer that Jesus made in John chapter 17, and he was praying for us that we would have, that God would give us the same love for Jesus that God has for Jesus. I'm not sure exactly how to articulate that, but I think it's a prayer that God will always answer. And that is, we just pray to say, Father, by the power of your Holy Spirit, would you give me an increased passion for Jesus? That's level 1. So God's always going to answer that prayer. If you pray that sincerely, your passion for Jesus increases. And so then your priorities change a little bit there. And if you pray it every day, it just grows every day. So you have that passion for Jesus. The second thing that I wanted to say is, where are your values? Like, different people have different value systems, and different cultures have different value systems. In Japan, the top value system was work. You're at work before the boss arrives. You're there till the boss leaves. It could be 12 hours a day, could be Saturday. You might have 3 days off a year, 5 or whatever, if you dare take them. I think I'd heard about Susanna Wesley. She had 17 children, and she wanted to spend an hour a day with each of her children. And so I thought, before my kids were born, for each of the children I have, I need an hour a day. So I got 3 kids. I needed an hour a day. I need 3 hours a day on average with my kids. The average North American father spends about 5 minutes of quality time with his son each day, and that's the average. Now, for women and the girls, it's very close, about 7 minutes. So, the study is probably 10 years old, but it's probably even less by now. So I thought, okay, I need an hour a day with my kids. I need time to be with my wife every day. So I gave up taking a job because it would take me away from my family, because my higher priority over work was my time with my family. So I wasn't always perfect at it, but I invested an awful amount of time with my kids, and there's no financial return yet. There probably never will be, especially if they go and be the 5th generation of missionaries. Doesn't even matter, right? But we have great relationships with our kids, and our kids are all following the Lord, just going full on with the Lord. So that, I look at myself, I'm wealthy in that regard. The hustle, though, I think there's an aspect of diligence. I think you're right, but I don't think it should be frenetic, in a sense of I'm just going to run and run and run, and I have to do 14 hours. I'd rather see you work smart at something, Like if you're trying to make $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $200 an hour, there's no way you should be doing your own social media, right? Because you can pay someone $5, $10 an hour to do that. You can't possibly reach your goals if you're trying to do $5 an hour work. So I would say, first step as an entrepreneur, if you've got any type of money to come in to pay someone, hire someone 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, to go and do your social media for you. And that would be just a step to do it. But I'd say make sure that if you're married, you're spending time with your wife or husband. If you have kids, that they're a focus. Because, okay, so here's some ancient Chinese wisdom, or it might come from me. I'm not sure where it was. But you spend a third of your life in bed, right? 8 hours a day. The average person, maybe they spend 6 or 7, I don't know, let's just call it 8, third of your life in bed. So you want to have a great mattress. Don't skimp on your mattress, and make sure you have a good mattress mate. You got to spend a third of your life in bed with this lady or husband, whatever. You want to enjoy waking up next to them. And so we've been married for 31 years, and we still enjoy being in bed together. Enough said there, too much information. You got to have a good computer, good laptop, good setup screen, right? A good chair. If you're going to sit in your chair for 12 hours a day, make sure you have a good chair. You have a good monitor, right? You're eating well, you're taking care of yourself, you're exercising, all those things. So how are you going to hustle and just go all the time if you want to live a life of balance? How do you do that? And so should you work hard? Yes, seasons where you should be working maybe 12 hours a day, but you better have some time off the other days, and it's probably more than 1 day a week. My guess, you're gonna need some time to make sure you live your life in balance. That's where I'm coming from. I know that in, of course, East Asia, I've spent a lot of time in Indonesia, Jakarta. Even the Christians there just go all the time. I don't know how they do it. I just have no idea, because it's not my culture. I worked in Dubai for 4 months, and the 60-hour work week's pretty normal. But it's not for me. Who wants to do that? And if that's your life and you're just running around, and maybe it's, maybe you don't have other models of how to live. And, I'm still out of balance. I haven't read a book, for enjoyment for a year. I'm just too busy. But part of it is my work full time with a leader and doing the software and all that, and then creating things. And then my ministry is creating all these other resources for people in Africa to use. And so because my work is normally 2 p.m. to 10 or 11 p.m., then I have my morning free till 2 p.m. I don't want to sit around and watch TV. Netflix is who cares about that stuff, right? I don't want to read a book in the morning. It just feels lazy. So I want to go and walk. I want to do stuff. And, I might have time on weekends to do things that I really enjoy doing, whatever. But it's just, the older I get, the more I want to become an extremist on balance. Kind of an oxymoron, but that's where we're at.
Well, and you're in a different season right now. When we had kids, that was, really important to us. And so we wanted to make sure we had time for our kids. Now we're empty nesters. So it's a whole different season for us. But I really do appreciate the concept of Sabbath. And I think we all need to take that in and realize that we do need to, take that 24 hours and just set aside everything to give us that freedom to worship or rest or do those kind of things. I mean, that's set up for a reason. And I think I've always tried to put that into place in my life. So, there is a season to work. Work is a part of life for sure. But I think relationships are really important and really crucial. And I think that's what we're here for, is relationship and community. And so, everybody's designed differently. Extroverts can handle a little more, than the introvert can. And I think just taking all of that into consideration is really important. But this day and age, I just I'm frightened because everyone's got their phone. They're looking at their phones all the time. And, we had policies. I mean, we didn't have phones growing up like that, right? And our kids didn't either. And so I think it was about like middle school or high school, they started getting cell phones. And I remember, we made a policy, we're having dinner. There's no phones at the dinner table. Just leave them somewhere else. Even when guests came, I'm like, nope, no phones at the table. Sorry. This is conversation time. This is where you learn the art of conversation, and it breaks my heart. We go out to eat or we see, people are just sitting there on their phones, and it's like, put those things away. They are a distraction. They are a huge distraction. And I just want to encourage parents, especially, put those things away, like put them in an office. We don't sleep with any phones in our room, like nothing. We have the traditional alarm clock, that we can look at, because it's too easy. It's too easy to get distracted. And I can't do that. I really need to focus in my life. And so even when I'm working, my phone is in the other room so I can focus. Part of that's my age. I'm turning 60 this year. I don't quite have all of that, native digital thing that went on. I'm still feel like an immigrant in that sense, because I grew up with the telephone, one telephone in a place with a cord. I remember taking the cord and the phone and going into the closet so I could talk to my friends, but everybody else knew what was going on. And sometimes I think we should go back to that. But, I do want to encourage that balance is really important, where we set aside time and just go, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's hard mentally because you wake up thinking about work. Oh, I should get on that email. I should just do that right now. And it's like, you know what? You don't need to do it right now. Just make a note to yourself to do it later. Let's focus. Let's start our day right. And it's hard, especially when you're working in the same company, because, we're always saying, well, we can't talk about work now. we gotta wait. Let's save that for later, and that's a discipline. It's not easy to do.
Let me say that strategically, if your prospects, clients know that you're always available, I think it cheapens you. And I would like people to consider if they think that they have to hustle like this. When you're meeting someone at a meal, your phone is not on the table. You respect the person you're with. And I was in Jakarta, met with a guy who wanted to talk about a business deal. He put his two phones on the table and we're talking about something, and he answered them constantly.
Wow.
And I walked away going, I'm not going to even think about doing business with this guy because he doesn't respect me. I had my phone off the table. So you don't even have a phone on the table because it limits conversation. It limits openness between people. And then when you're meeting with someone, you meet with that person. And if the phone rings, you just say, I'm not going to answer it. You're more important. And I think strategically, you become more valuable to those that you're meeting with because they know that you honor their time. I don't think you have to hustle. I think you want to be smart. You want to be the best in your field. You want to take time to be the person of excellence. You want to be recognized as someone who serves people at a higher level and brings a greater result. And that is not about running around. That's about being strategic and bringing greater advice, bringing greater benefit. That's not a hustle thing. That's a strategic thing. And that actually requires you to slow down and think a little bit about how you're going to bring a greater benefit. So there we go.
Wonderfully said. I wish I have more time to the conversation, but really want to honor you guys for taking this time with us. And in the final few minutes, just two final questions. The second final question is this: is there something that you would like to share with the audience, the viewers? Maybe it's a question we never get to ask you, but it's something that you would love to share with all of us. The final message for this podcast. Yes, time to Patrick. Time to call.
Wow. I think, just remember your journey with the Lord is more important. The journey with the family, your family is more important than anything else as you walk through, because you're gonna live with your spouse for 60, 80, 70 years, whatever, if you're fortunate. You're gonna live with your kids, and you want to pour into your kids as you do whatever crazy schemes of entrepreneurship you do. If you're a pastor, you still have a family that you should be spending time with. I think it's still your greatest ministry is working with your family. So why lose your family if you're, to go and do whatever you think is more important? So I just say, put the Lord first, your family second, and then after that comes whatever you think is so important that you're going to do, because God will take you out of it. If your focus is wrong, God will allow your business to fail or allow whatever to mess up your world so that you can grow closer and be more like Jesus. And he's going to do everything it takes to get your attention, to make sure you've got your focus right. So that would be my final encouragement to people. Holly?
I think my final is, the story is not over. And so wherever you are right now, it may be a really hard time, but you know what? A year from now, it's going to look different. 5 years from now, it's going to look different. I never knew when Pat was like trying to put this software together and he's trying to sell this and trying to do all this. I never knew I would be working for the same company and then working with all the coaches who use the software and have them all say to me, your husband's a genius. This software is amazing. And I mean, there's no way like 8 years ago that I would have been able to know that was going to be the final part of this journey. And it's, and that I would actually be working for the same company and meeting Jeremiah, meeting all these amazing coaches that come on that want to serve and help people. So if that's any encouragement, I just want to say the story's not over. You're just in the middle of the chapter right now, and just hang on and just trust God to see where he's going to take you out of this or through this.
Amen, amen, and amen. And final question is, where can we reach out to you? Social media or website? Is there any website or social media accounts that would be best to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, well, website is almost finished, but we've got the basics going at least. And it's iamlionheart.com. iamlionheart.com. That's where we are.
Wonderful. All right. And we'll make sure to include that in the description, in the captions, so that the viewers could just click on the URL and get to the website almost immediately. Yes. Once again, right, Patrick, Holly, wonderful conversation. And I felt so ministered as well while during the conversation. And I believe, Josh, right? Yes. We are just benefiting so much from you guys, pouring in this conversation, gems of wisdom. But yes, we look forward. Hopefully we get to do it again. It's fun. But
I'd love to.
Yes. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm really excited for what you guys are doing. I think it's fantastic. So, praise the Lord. And I just want to keep following you and seeing what your generation is doing and your whole program and your coaching. And so, it's exciting to hear.
Thanks a lot, Holly. Appreciate it.
Amen. Yeah. God be the glory. And just a final note, right, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of all, remember, if you truly want to change your life, change the lives of those around you. And this is a 100x Dudes podcast. Thanks for listening. Take care and be awesome.